Hello, let's have a look at a different kind of weapon today compared to the type I usually look at. Let's see what you get when you buy a couple of heavily discounted Windlass Steelcraft specials from, in this case, the Night Shop. Here goes. I'll say a bit about the Night Shop to begin with. That's because I mention them quite a bit, and I don't want people to think that I have some particular bias. Fact of the matter is, though, that generally they have the cheapest products. I started off, as I mentioned before, buying swords from Cold Steel. Didn't take me long to find out that that was a really bad deal, and you're charged a lot more for them in Britain than you are in America. And even then, they may not be particularly well priced. But I've tried Southern Swords, I've tried Barrington Swords, one other I can't remember the name of now, and I've used the Night Shop. I thought the Night Shop sounded a bit silly. Put it this way, I'm primarily a martial artist. I would not dream in 1,000 years of buying anything from something that called itself the Ninja Shop, and I think I'll stick with that for the rest of my life. But I found out, despite some reservations based on the name, the Night Shop's well equipped. It has lots of items and they have good policy, good prices. That's enough for now. I might do a broader review on them. Anyway, I often, when I'm looking for weapons now, whereas once I would have gone to Cold Steel's website or blades.co.uk and see what's there, I now tend to go to the Night Shop and have a look for the type I want, or perhaps just look at what's there for quite a good price at the moment. Anyway, I found these from Windlass Steelcraft and they cost £90, and you're not told much about them. This was sold as cavalry sword and this as military sword, and there's not a lot of difference. It's really just the guard, and I think that it's because, in theory, you don't want such a large protruding guard as this one when you're using a blade riding a horse. That said, I don't think it really makes that much difference. You're talking about 3 centimeters at the most. But I do think that is something you do find on military swords. Whether it's really practical or not is hard to say. I bought this one first for £90. They both have an identical scabbard. And they assure you that they are high quality weapons with carbon steel blades, and it certainly seems to be carbon steel to me. I should probably wear eye protection. I'm not as brave as Matt Easton, for example, who would bend this as far as it goes. But my understanding is, if it wasn't carbon steel, you'd only have to go so far before it's not straight anymore. So I'm convinced it's carbon steel. I bought this one, the military one, first, then because it wasn't bad, I bought this one. Also, it's because I wanted to make this video, you can see here, and I needed 2 swords for that purpose. Seems a bit of a waste, but it was only £90, and I also have thought, if I have a friend around and we want to spar, it's possible, because these are blunt, have to do something about the end. And apart from that, you could just wear a gambeson and eye protection, and you could do some basic stuff, nothing too dangerous. So I'm glad to have them. I thought at one point, after making the previous video, that I might ruin one of them just hitting an old tree stump and see how much damage it can take. But I've decided against that because they're a little nicer than I originally thought. The military, as opposed to the cavalry one, has a thicker blade. I don't think you're going to see that though on camera. We're talking about 4mm to 5.5mm, I would say. And this is actually quite thick on the back. They're only sharp for just over a third towards the end. I tried to do a little bit of research about that and I couldn't find much, but I have heard it said by Matt Easton in this case that sometimes military swords weren't sharp along the whole length, and that makes pretty good sense. It means you've got something thicker down here in what they call the strong of the blade, to parry with in case there are some heavy weapons. You could find yourself using one of these. Not very likely you'll be parrying a longsword or an arming sword, very unlikely I'd say, but you could be in a situation where you have to parry a bayonet or perhaps even just a gun. Not unthinkable that you'd have to use it against a spear. Overall, the military one is thicker and more durable. I'm not sure if that's part of the reason that they're specials, part of what's actually wrong with them. Perhaps this one shouldn't be thinner, or perhaps it should and it's meant to be lighter because it's a cavalry sword. I'm not sure if it's possible to say that cavalry would use their weapons less and therefore not have to rely upon it as much, therefore it can be a little bit lighter and not so durable. I think the fact that it's not something I know a lot about, but the fact that cavalry wouldn't be using rifles very much means that they are more likely to use their sword quite often. Since buying these and wondering about them, I have learned a little bit more about them. I think it's really guesswork. I stumbled across a slightly different version of the Night Shop webpage where they seem to focus on military weapons, and I found a lot of what seemed to be these with additional ornamentation. Brass fittings, stamping, I wouldn't imagine it's engraving, and apart from that they seem to be the same. I also found that you can buy the scabbards replacements, and these cost £70 each. So I paid £90 for each sword with a scabbard, and the scabbard itself would cost £70. So I essentially got each of these for £20. Pretty good deal. If you look at the Windlass specials now on the Night Shop, you'll find they've got one, something a bit peculiar to me, wooden-handed Cavalier sword, I think it's called. And that's for £50. And then they've got what they're calling a serpent-tongued Mameluke sword for, I can't remember if it's 60 or 80. Anyway, if you want a carbon steel sword that's pretty cheap, you could go there and buy this Mameluke sword right now, and it's probably well worth it for the price, considering the steel it's made out of and the size of it. When looking at these military swords on the website, I saw a lot of swords that seemed to be based on these. I think I just said that. Let's have a look. If I place this on this side of the screen, hopefully I can place an image just beside it and we can see how close it is. And also I think it was this way. If I have it the wrong way around, you can laugh at me. And also this way. And this is for what they sell as an 1834 pattern household cavalry sword. I think that they can be relied upon to a degree when they put information, when they're selling things, but it's not a historical source. And I told you before about the text they say with the Temple Church sword, the first one I reviewed, and it's not very convincing. I think it is a marketing spiel. It's not really historical information about the weapon. And let's also have a close-up at the military sword, and I will show on the screen, perhaps next to it here, a sword that seems very similar, that's sold as a British infantry officer's 1897 sword. That's really all I've got to go on. They do mention on the website, I can't remember the exact wording, but they do mention that there may be imperfections, and this one, the cavalry one, seems perfect for me, but the military one does have a problem here where the guard joins the pommel, and it's very sharp. You're not too likely to have your hand right there, but if you do, it could cut you. And I filed it down a little bit, and I'll do that a little bit more. It's certainly not something that makes it not worth having, especially at a good price, so that's a lot better already. That said, I do wonder about how durable these are. I don't think it would take a lot of impact to separate this. And I'm not sure you'd really want to use these on the battlefield, although the blades are carbon steel. They're certainly durable. They're not like some kind of stainless steel display swords. I know I used to have one, a sabre, and it would fall to pieces very easily. I used to have swords worse than that when I was quite young. They list these as being for living history, and other products they might list as being for HEMA, for reenactment, or for cutting. I don't think they actually use HEMA, they'll just say reenactment. If they say reenactment, it means you can hit things pretty hard with it, and it's going to be fairly safe. They only say living history with these, and I think it doesn't mean that they're not very durable, but they don't want to guarantee it. They probably don't want somebody using one of these. I don't know. I don't know if modern military have their swords anywhere near the battlefield. I think they probably stay in the barracks for parades. I do believe that the military use these on some of the military versions I found. As I say, it's a bit strange. You can look for... the Night Shop website seems to have some different versions, and I stumbled across some military swords. I can't find as large a listing of them now. They cost 220 up to 250. The first one I put images on the screen of was 220, the other one 250, and I paid £90 for these. Not as ornate, but I'm not using them to be ornamental. That said, these ones do happen to live in the living room where they sit at the side. That's because anywhere else I keep swords is full at the moment, above all, but still they are ornamental. They do look nice. They are definitely, it looks like they're sold to the military. I understand that only officers buy their own swords, and if you're an officer and you're quite proud, you probably want to spend a bit more than $250 on a sword. If you bought one of these, I don't think you're going to impress people in particular, but I do think polished, and this is not polished, it will look quite good enough as part of your uniform. That's all I really know about them. Let's just have a little swing. This is a larger version of the stick that I'd normally have here. I actually tried a pole, a few different things, and the pole didn't swing very well. This is good just to test mobility, and I'm not experienced with one-handed sword use. I've learned a bit with a sabre. Always surprised that nobody has criticised me, because on the introduction to my videos I do a couple of flourishes with the left foot forward, which is a bit of a silly thing to do, but I just try to learn enough to do something for the video, just to say that swords are a part of what we'll look into on this channel. It wasn't very good. I certainly know you'll have a very straight stance, and unlike with a lot of the older weapons I look at, you can do a lot from the wrist, which makes it very fast. And you can't do that so well. I tried a couple of circle cuts with the Honshu very large sword that I reviewed a little while ago, and it hurt, and it's just too slow. But here you can do quite a bit. It means potentially if you were both unarmoured and you had one of these and you met somebody with an arming sword, you probably got as much length, and you might put them in danger. As long as they do the right thing, as long as you do the right thing. If you try to parry like this, you might be in trouble. If you parry with the strong of the blade, you manage to control the weapon, you may well be able to make quicker cuts. And I think you might have an advantage with the lighter weapon. And with that in mind, let's have a look at the weight. I've just noticed this felt fell off the end. I think it's something that goes on there as just to stop moisture getting into the scabbard. I wonder why it's not glued. When I got the first one, I thought perhaps that was part of the fault, but they both have one. Should it be glued? I don't know. Certainly it's quite a swift weapon. Let's just have a look at the weight. They're very heavy swords, come up towards 2 kilos, and as I found out, they tend to be too heavy for you to want to do much with. This will certainly be under 1 kilo. And I'm not doing that very well. Come on. 600 grams. It's a bit less than I thought. That's for the cavalry type. Let's have a look at the military type with the thicker blade. Something's wrong there. Okay, I think I don't know why, but it had frozen. So let's try them both. I think this was 600. Well, yeah, 600, okay. And now let's make it clear. Right, I think you have to clear it in between. I've only ever weighed one blade at a time before. So we've got 600 to 795. Okay, well 200 grams when they're very similar to design isn't that small a difference. Let's see if I can feel it. I think I can. Oh, yes. Right. That 200 grams, it actually makes quite a difference. There you have it. I wouldn't have known that. I learned something today. So that's it really. It's what I'm trying to say is if you can find a well-priced item on the Night Shop's Windlass Steelcraft Specials section, then you're probably getting something pretty good. In this case, it seems to be a sort of a template to be further worked on. And if we go back to the image of the blade with the ornamental worked on version, we will see the blade is sharp from about here, whereas this only becomes sharp here. When I say sharp, it's got an edge on it. It needs to be sharpened, and it's very likely that I will work on one of these with the whetstones. I've got some pretty good quality whetstones haven't used yet, and I might work on one or both of these first before I do anything with the more expensive swords I have. I have a long sword I'd like to recover, and before it's all finished, let's just see what happens, even though it's a blunt sword, when we give Red Monkey a couple of thrusts. I used this ugly little monkey a while ago when I was making a lifting video in the shed, and he took a single crossbow bolt, a light crossbow bolt, to the groin, and he's been leaking ever since. And I thought, because it's made out of rubber and it's pretty durable and you can twist it and throw it, I thought it would last to stab with things, hit with things, and that I'd have it for a while. But it's not the case. And I was going to wear some goggles for this because there's something very nasty that leaks out from inside, but I don't have them. I'll just try to keep at sufficient range. Let's see what it does, and if it empowers the thing, then I'm putting it in the bin because it annoys me. And I'll need to find a new Red Monkey. Well, that wasn't very good. Okay, well, it's too light to stab. Oh, left-handed in the face. Well, I think that's the end. Let's just try a slash. You see, I expect this will cut bottles. Won't do it today because it's nearly dark now, but I've used the supposed ninja sword that I have. It's nothing like what we imagine ninja swords to be from the movies. I used that to cut some bottles, even though it has nearly a millimetre edge on it. I'm sure these would do it too, but it gets wet. I'm going to do something with a lot of cutting soon because I haven't done enough of it. Well, that's not a lot of use. That's it, enough of the monkey. Here's a military sword, a cavalry sword, and they're worth having. That's it for a quick review. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Cheers.